Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of TriVersity Talk. I am Steven Bloomer-Teague.
And I am Wendy Stewart Kaplan, and happy Thursday night on this beautiful spring light Thursday night. How happy are we to have like spring? It's like it's almost here. This is great.
Absolutely. I can see some of the ground today at my house.
Oh, Steven, that's huge.
I know. I was thinking I would see all of the ground, but I was just happy. The little patch on the hill. And I'm like, yes.
Look at me about it. Well, that's cool.
We're almost done. But anyway, before we get started, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're at, give us a subscribe, a like, a love, a smashing of buttons, not the anger face, preferably.
Preferably.
Thumbs up or love sign is perfect. And just quickly want to do a couple of announcements. On March 19th, we are having a happy unanniversary drag bingo with Bell Pepper, because March 19th was the day of the first statewide shutdown, and that was in California. And what better way to deal with that than just to have fun and stick it to the pandemic and raise some money for TriVersity. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to throw the link is here in the comments. I'm just going to throw it up here. It doesn't look like it.
I have to throw out there that Bell Pepper is really wonderful at hosting drag bingo and trivia. Although the bingo is better for me. I get trivia is like, I don't know why I don't know these things. You know, you have to know all this stuff about Britney Spears. I'm just
Bell Pepper asked hard questions too. I mean, even about stuff like Britney Spears, those questions are intense. I love Britney, or at least I thought I did.
I don't know all of this.
But one further announcement, and this is something that has kind of arisen from this Dawn Bouquet controversy, is we're holding an Equality Act Town Hall Forum. And that will be virtually, and that will be on March 23rd. We have a terrific panel. We have Reverend Brandon Robertson, who is a theologian. We have a pediatric endocrinologist, Dr. Marissa Kashmir. We have Sharita Gruberg from Center for American Progress. And we have Chrissy Gonzalez, who is kind of a local LGBTQ hero here, for what she did in bringing about better conditions for trans students at Delaware Valley High. So we're very excited for that. And let me post up the link here. Again, these are all in the comments. So find that and then RSVP to us and we'll get you that Zoom link. So I'm done. I'm done with my announcements.
Well, I'm very excited about our guest tonight, Celeste Fiore from Argentino Fiore Law, and a founder and chair of the Trans Affirming Alliance, which is an advocacy group. Celeste is a mover and shaker and is really making a huge difference out there. She is changing people's lives, which is something we like to highlight on here. Trans people's lives in particular, although they do, thank you, and forgive me for that, they do LGBTQ advocacy as well. But as everybody knows, the Gender Equality Act that's happening right now, we have a lot of things on the table. And certainly we need our lawyers, we need our advocates, we need people that are paving the way. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Celeste Fiore.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for just getting the misgendering right out of the way. We can just like dispense with that, and we don't even need to do it again. And I can it's like the perfect jumping off point, because I do it to myself. I've actually misgendered myself and used the wrong pronoun. Why I would be speaking about myself in the third person, I will never know, but it's happened.
I'm glad we're having this conversation right off the bat, because I mean, they, them, their pronouns are ones that I have to practice, because even though I'm not like one of these people that say that's ungrammatical, but it's like my subconscious brain fights me every time, and it's like I have to walk very
Exactly. And I was thinking of your name, even though I knew your pronouns ahead of time. My person who does the PR, I went over his PR to make sure everything was perfect. I went with the name Celeste, and it immediately rolled into a female pronoun with the name Celeste. Stephen and I talk about pronouns all the time, and we really all do our best, and we continue to try and do a good job with it. My husband is an abysmal failure with it. I am going to get a pronoun stun gun for him because Stephen knows Alan completely messes it up. But yeah, it's something that we talk about all the time that we all feel we could do better with. So thank you so much, Celeste, for being here. I waited a while to have you come on this show. I wanted you to be on the show. I knew who you were. And, the timing couldn't have been better with everything we've got going on. So, Steven, the floor is yours.
Oh, Celeste, I'll start. Let's talk about your career. So you're an attorney at Argentino Fiore Law and Advocacy. So tell us more about the firm and what you do.
Well, the firm is an incredible safe space, baby, trauma-informed, wonderful LGBTQ-focused firm. We now have 5 attorneys. It originally started off with just my partner, Jody Argentino, and I. And Jody is my partner squared. We are both married and in business together. So the pandemic has been really interesting.
Wow, I'm sure that's been fun.
We can certainly talk about that. So there's a lot of closeness and a lot of time together. So that's been fun. But the firm is primarily focused on LGBTQ people. We do family law, we do education law. So what's going on with the school board is really interesting to me because we've seen a lot of those fights throughout the country, and every one is just a little bit different. It's kind of like there's a playbook, and then when one little thing doesn't work, there's a little tweak, and we find something just a little bit different. So I applaud your efforts there to be holding folks accountable for the things that they do and they say. And yeah, it is. And one of the other things that our firm does is we do civil rights cases for LGBT people. So sometimes there are really unique issues that come up for us. So whether or not it's harassment, whether or not it's some other form of discrimination, like if you are not receiving proper medical care, or you're in a hospital in New Jersey and your gender is not being affirmed, that's a violation of the New Jersey law against discrimination. And not a lot of people really think about those things because they're just trying to get taken care of. But it's that lingering feeling of something wasn't right about that experience. And we have to, trust our gut as LGBTQ people that, we can read a room and our feelings are valid.
Have you had a lot of challenges? I know Simone, I've talked with Simone because I was doing a panel on gender, and I was completely unaware of how outing it is to be in an emergency room and to be called by your former name of another gender. And these are things people don't think about. Okay, the name changes and the gender. So could you elaborate just a little bit more on how you have, with examples, how you've helped people with that?
So I think that there are 2 sides of this. There is what you can do and what you need to use the court systems for, and what you don't need the court systems for. And I think it's really important for us as an LGBT community to know our rights. And for those of us who are, for those who are not part of the T, to be able to know what's fair and what's right, and to be able to stand up and advocate for, our trans siblings like me. So in order to change your name on most identification documents, you need to have a court order that says, I, this judge, authorize this person to use another name. You have to get a certified copy of that, and you take it to, say, the DMV, or you would take it to the U.S. Passport Office or the Social Security, and it's a court order. So those agencies have to follow that, and they have to change your name. Okay, so that's pretty simple. But what about a kid in school in New Jersey? do they have to go through a legal name change to have, to be called the name that they want to be called? In New Jersey, no, absolutely not. There's no requirement that there be a legal name change. And in fact, under our guidance here in the state, the school is supposed to use the name and pronoun that the student chooses, and they don't have to disclose that to parents.
Oh,
that's not the
decision.
No. So if there's
New Jersey is, when it comes to this, definitely more lenient, more open, more affirming than other places. But we talk about all this stuff on a state level. What do you think is preventing it? Okay, I'm going to make it a bigger picture here. What's preventing it from a national level? We have a brand new administration. Okay, it's a brand new day for everybody. Is there anything on the table to really start to put these rights out there nationwide?
That's a great transition to highlight the Equality Act, which is HR 5, that is right now in the House of Representatives. And for those people who don't look at legislation often, everybody thinks it's like this big stack of papers and regulations and all sorts of
I do. I'm one of those people.
Sense. Exactly. Well, for you folks, just Google the Equality Act and click on the link that has the link to Congress. It's not very long. And if you start reading it, it starts off with a statement of purpose and, and just really affirming things, which is
basic human rights is what I did after I talked with you the other night, because I've been reading about it or whatever, but I was one of those people that imagined it as this enormous stock of legalese that I would be clueless. I'd ask Steven, right? Because I always defer to him. But you're exactly right. But it is basic human rights, not being fired from a job, okay? Having to be able to live where you want. These should be the rights of human beings everywhere.
But Celeste, I want to ask a question. I mean, after the Supreme Court decision we got this summer, do we even need the Equality Act anymore?
Yes. Oh, we absolutely do. So, and this is one of those times where I really dislike being a lawyer, because it's our fault, I think, that we need this, and I'm really just blaming courts in general. Because right now, the reason why I'm sorry, I'm blanking. Is it the Civil Rights Act of 1965? Well, the Civil Rights Act is one of a number of laws that would actually be amended by the Equality Act to include not just sexual orientation and gender identity, but also sex and also pregnancy. So the Equality Act is broader than just impacting LGBT people. There's a lot of other people that are going to end up benefiting from it. But I kind of digressed because I was avoiding why we need statutes as opposed to case law. Because the ultimate law of the land is our Constitution. And then pretty much right below that is like the Supreme Court's interpretation of the Constitution. But really it's not. It's about the federal laws that exist and provide a floor of basic human rights that we get in this country. It started with the Civil Rights Amendments after the Civil War, the 12th, 13th, and 14th Amendments. And, I'm already seeing Wendy glaze over. So let me skip to the good stuff. It stopped being that you could just discriminate on the basis of race. And that's what those laws say. So we know that in 1965, that's when that language was added to our federal laws, but we're still litigating those issues today. So I think the Equality Act is a really good start, but we know that it's going to take another decades or generations for that to actually play out. So we got to get on this, because we've got a bunch of young LGBT people that are coming up behind us who are going to demand these things, and they're going to get their rights because they're basic human rights. Just like you said.
Absolutely. I know this reference is dated, but I think we've tried to pass the Equality Act 50 legislative sessions now. So it's kind of like the Susan Lucci of legislation.
I love that. That's great.
And it's time that Susan Lucci won me.
Right.
It has to.
It's time. Its time has come. So from everything that I have read on it, one of the biggest challenges, and I'm sure as we all talk, people that are watching are probably wondering too, what is the biggest challenge? It seems to be religion, people's religious beliefs rolled into this as it rolls into basic human rights. Can you address that a little bit?
Sure. And somebody will yell at me if I say I'm not an expert on this, because I have my own experts. Because experts have their own experts that they go to. Kind of like, who cuts your hairstylist hair? That's what I want to know. Like,
Right.
my hair, right? Okay. So with that sort of half caveat there, I think that there is just some confusion over the First Amendment in the United States anyway. So I can't tell you how many times I have said something to the effect of, can you please stop cursing in front of my kids? And somebody will turn to me and say, well, it's my First Amendment right.
Oh,
There we go. And there's Steven the lawyer going, no.
I don't want to be a dick. I mean, thanks.
right.
Yeah, dick, but no, it's about the government infringing on your free exercise of religion and being able to, to practice your religion. And I think it's kind of a false dichotomy that religion is somehow posed against human rights, because that really hasn't been where religious freedom has been or has come from. We have a free exercise clause, and I don't see this as infringing upon the free exercise. But I'm curious, and I'm going to flip this on you, Steven, because I know that you're a lawyer and you like to lawyer.
I like to pretend to be.
So what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think it's ultimately bogus. Let's be real. I mean, these claims of religious freedom, I mean, I think one of the great things that the Equality Act does is it deals with public accommodation laws. Like, you can't be denied, you can't be discriminated against at a bank, for instance, with the Equality Act, which happens for a lot of women, but also could happen for gay men. And so the argument becomes, when it becomes a public accommodation, well, what if it's my sincere religious belief that I cannot work with a gay couple? Well, then it's balancing this freedom of religion versus, well, you're opening a business and it's open to the public. And, it's just one of those things that you kind of have to give up. You don't get to pick and choose who you let in. And
I think that there's nothing in the law that says that, and this is odd, but that if you're a religious institution, that is a place of public accommodation necessarily. There's no mandate that's going to affect the Catholic Church and tell the church what church policy needs to be, or a synagogue to say what the Torah says or what's Talmudic. Like, that's not what the Equality Act is about. It's about engaging in American civil society, and it's not about religion.
But nothing for nothing, it does protect religions. I mean, those public accommodation laws also say that you can't discriminate against people on their religion. So, I mean, the Equality Act could actually help religion instead of hinder it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but okay, so here we go. Now we're overlapping with religion, with basic human rights, okay? And politics, all right? People's beliefs. All three of these things are affecting what's going on out there. And the biggest challenge we're going to have with this Equality Act is, I believe, in this country, religious right. Okay, they've taken and they've polluted in so many levels what religion is, and they've turned it against what people's basic humanitarian rights are. That to me is going to be the biggest challenge. And I love, Celeste, that you do advocacy, all right, that you care enough to advocate and educate out there. Because personally, for things to really change, I think we have a window. I really do. I believe in this administration that we have now. I believe we have a window, but I also believe we're going to have to act really quick, because I think our country right now is it's a mess. And I can't blame it on the one that came before totally, because you know what? He had the fixins were all here. These people were ripe and ready to go, and he empowered them. And I think going forward, how do you personally feel the landscape looks for LGBTQ rights?
I think it's a really mixed bag, just like I think all of our lives are. There are certain places where there's a light. And I think that we don't necessarily find it in the main pages of our newspapers, which is funny because I just had an article about Trans Affirming Alliance. That's funny I bring that up.
Right.
Please. There's the article.
There it is.
Click at that link in the comments.
Right, and we have it up on our TriVersity page too for anybody that's watching that can go and read it. Yeah, so
and so I think it's in the places that we least expected, and that's one of the things that I learned from starting the Trans Affirming Alliance is that there are so many people who want to help transgender people. They just don't always know how to do it. And I think there's a lot of really affirming people who want to affirm LGBT folks in general. And part of it is that they're the silent majority that is going about their lives. And you know what they're not doing? They're not saying any hateful things. So they don't get the attention that somebody spewing hate does. Right. Because when you're walking down the street and somebody just gives you a gentle nod, you're not going to call the police and say they were harassing me. Of course, it's, we see a lot of the negative. And I think that sometimes the coverage of what is so negative makes it seem like there's more of an issue. And I think what's happening actually with a lot of these anti-trans kids bills that are percolating on the state level, frankly, they're making it seem like every single trans kid is out there trying to play on a women's sports team. And in there are very few trans kids that I've worked with who are clamoring to be in a gendered sport. And this comes up with non-binary people. So I often get asked the question, well, what do we do with a non-binary kid in sports? And I say, have a very accepting policy. And then if the person really wants to play and can't pick one, then come talk to me.
Right. Because
chances are that a kid who wants to play sports knows what team they want to play on. And it's not like they, fell out of the sky. They know their gendered teams. Right. So they have to know. And this kind of goes back to one of my theories, which is when transgender people involved, people lose their minds. They literally
right.
Yeah.
They're like, whoa, hold on a second. And you're like, but they've lived here. They know how things work.
Right.
We did it, they didn't patch. Trans people have existed with us. And so it's funny to me. I've had people say, well, I don't know how to ask them their name. What's your name?
What's your name?
No, you're right. It gets treated like the elephant in the room. But that to me is, where we've been, right? Which I attribute to lack of education. I think we really need to start on the school level. Steven and I had on a couple that does trans support for parents. They were wonderful. But they were one little group. Yeah. Why do we not have, I love what you're doing with the Trans Affirming Alliance, because I know you want to put individuals with organizations and all of that. I think it's an amazing idea and a very much needed idea. So what do we have to do to make that, it's normal support. It's like, we deserve that as people.
Yeah. And I think that for just regular people, if you tell them that what they're already doing is okay, right? Sometimes people just need that. So just call somebody the name that they tell you to call. If they ask you to use a different pronoun, do your best. And then if you screw up, say, I'm sorry, and move on, just like,
right. Just like what happened tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that, you're not, there is no actual army of transgender people that police other people for misgendering trans people. Like, I get the sense that folks, like, when they're losing their mind because there's a trans person, they're like, oh my gosh, somebody's going to come out of the woodwork and attack me if I do something wrong. And you're like, no, that's not a thing that happens. Like, right. I think that people project the fact that they don't want to do something to hurt another person, and then they react defensively. Like, they want to put up a wall because they don't actually want to harm somebody else's feelings.
And that is, you know what, that's very valid. And that's really coming at it from a very positive viewpoint.
I spent a lot of time being negative about myself, negative about my community. Like, it's just never
away at all. I'm like loving everything that you're saying.
Well, I mean, I grew up really angry. Like, I didn't fit in. I'm from Allentown, Pennsylvania, in the Lehigh Valley, and I felt like I had 6 heads. I didn't feel like I fit in. It was very gendered, very straight. That is not to say that I didn't have plenty of girlfriends on the side, because that's what happens in small towns.
Right.
But I wanted to get somewhere, you know, big, but I was mad. I was so mad at all the gender roles. I was so mad that there were all of these expectations of me just because, you know, a doctor held me up when I was a baby and pointed at my genitals, you know, right. Like, that's a lot of baggage.
It's a lot of baggage. And for you, how old were you when the realization, you know, first started?
Oh, I always knew I was different. And so I thought, like, okay, maybe I'm like gay. And every time somebody called me a lesbian, I was like, that's not sure. I mean, I like the ladies part, but the you calling me a woman thing, no, I don't think that's right.
Not right.
So I always embraced a very, like, left-wing, progressive, more radical term like a dyke or queer or gender queer. I was always gravitated toward that. It's not very specific. There's some ambiguity there.
Right. But in terms of, like, being a kid, this is something we talk about a lot, being a kid and trying to fit in. We've talked to a lot of people that knew they were different early on, or whatever that different is. They just knew they weren't like the other kids. Did you have really great parental support, sibling support, people that, you know, were really helping you along the way? Because that makes a huge difference for a lot of people.
Yeah, it does. So I used to get asked very often who my hero was. And I was like, I'm going to answer a different question. How do I know what I want to be when I grow up? And I was looking at all of the negative examples around me and being like, not going to do that, not going to do that, not going to do that, not going to do that. And what was I left with? Apparently, I'm now left with a lot of positivity as my hair gets gray, right? I don't know. But I didn't have the most supportive family or parents, which is funny because my mom was in a same-sex relationship in the 80s with a Cuban woman. So, like,
right.
Right. Go ahead. And then now your brain should explode, right? Yeah. Because you're like, how does this add up? It doesn't.
It doesn't. And maybe that's what we need to say and to know. It doesn't always add up. But right. I mean, somewhere along the way, it's the strength of the person, right, that prevails. Something was working for you to get you from there to here.
Yeah. You know, I think it was actually, I'm going to give a lot of credit to undergrad. So when going away to college was really great for me. I went to American University. I was there during 9/11, but it was a really welcoming, open environment. In the year 2000, we changed the name of the LGBT undergrad group from at least 10%. What is that? To AU Queers and Allies. So I was like, we were way ahead of our time with the Q word.
Big change.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I think it was being in DC and being this, like, really activist, like, we're gonna tear it down. You know, I was there for the World Trade Organization protests and you know, Bush's inauguration. So it was just the culture. And I was like, sign me up.
Right. Yeah. I'm here.
And so you went from that to, I mean, was it right away when you said sign me up for law school, or was there a gap? Or
There was that's a funny story, and it's the gayest story because I was coming back from a same-sex wedding up in Massachusetts in like 2004 or 5. So I think it was just same-sex marriage was just legal in Massachusetts. And I went to check the mail. We had been gone for like, I don't know, a few days. And there's like a big manila envelope. And I'm like, what the heck is in my mailbox? And it was Rutgers School of Law in Camden saying, hey, have you ever thought about going to law school? And I thought, yes, I have. How did you know? And they were like, we got your GRE scores. You don't have to take the law school admissions test. We're going to give you a scholarship if you want to apply to law school in 3 days. So I did. And then I started in August. So that's how I went to law school.
What that is such a meant to be story, you know?
For nothing, the GRE is harder than the LSAT. I'm just gonna keep it real. I mean, the LSAT's kind of fun, but if you do well at the GRE, you should be able to go to any law school you want.
Steven, you had to do both, right?
Oh no, I didn't take the GRE. I was like, oh, girl, I don't have good enough vocabulary for that, and my math skills haven't helped me. It's like that's like the SAT on steroids, and I wasn't having it. The LSAT, I mean, it is kind of fun. I mean, people hate the logic game section, but if you master it, then you're playing games during a test. And so, I mean, it's not an easy exam, but I mean, I think it's a heck of a lot more fun than the GRE.
I was just happy to not have to pay another $100 and something because I did not have it. I was on unemployment from a video store. That's what I was doing in my life.
It's interesting because law school found you didn't find it. And that's an amazing part of your story, really.
Yeah, I think I came up with the name of my autobiography. It's going to be Stumbling Towards Excellence.
Ah,
I'm just like,
right. That is great. So when did you start your law firm?
We opened up in 2017. I had my own firm for about a year or so, and Joe had a number of firms before. And so, yeah, we're about 3 years old, and we've doubled in size. We represent a lot of people. And you know what's great, though? And so I do want to say this, and this is where I have to be optimistic, right? Is that when we first started our firm, people would say to us, well, do you really want to be so LGBT focused? Don't you think you're going to alienate, a lot of people? Like, is this a good business decision? And so Jody and I were talking, we were like, quite frankly, can you imagine representing somebody who didn't support LGBT rights? Like, who, look at this. Like, right. you have to be okay with me, with like, your lawyer as a person and like what they stand for. So if they don't support LGBT people, then they would not be a very good fit for our firm. Like it wouldn't happen. And again, that's the false dichotomy that gets set up.
Yeah.
Right? Is that it's not actually you alienating. It's the fact that you're reaching out to a lot of people who are really affirming. And one of the first clients that I had at my own firm said that they chose me for a commercial case. It wasn't even anything LGBT related, but they chose me because I was LGBT, and not because they wanted to support a young solo who was
of who you were.
Yeah.
That's great. But I'm sure for a lot of people that come to the firm, I can imagine it's because they know someone will actually attempt to use their correct pronouns or call them by the name they want and not have to worry about things like that when they go to a firm when presumably they're already dealing with some major drama because that's what brought them there in the first place.
Right.
Yeah. You're right on. And there are also some things that, are different about people who were assigned the same sex at birth who have children together, right? Like you needed genetic material from somebody else. And you'd be surprised how many times we, will talk to couples who the second question when they're divorcing is, well, do you have any more embryos? And they'll say, oh yeah, we do. But, the other attorney we went to didn't ask us that. And I thought, well, that's because they're coming at things from like this very cisgender heterosexual paradigm where you're walking around with your materials that you need, right? And so
that is a very big issue of what I mean. There've been, and you know this better than I, the amount of cases that have come up in the last years about that, and that's a tough one, you know.
Yeah, it's really it's an honor to actually see how people make their families and what they will do to protect their families. And I think that, you know, one of the things about the LGBT community is that it's been around forever and it has found ways to survive through a lot. And so that's kind of, that helps me sleep at night, because I can look above me and see, you know, unfortunately, we lost a lot of our gay men, you know, in the 70s and 80s due to the AIDS epidemic and like the lack of action by the federal government and by state governments.
Right.
And so in where I see, and I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, but I can't because I'm looking back behind me and I'm looking at all of these like wonderful, like trans activists of color. Yes. And I'm like, I hope that there's like, that's what's coming behind me. And like, that needs to be at the forefront right now. But they're facing a plague as well. The life expectancy of a Black trans woman in the United States is 36.
Yeah.
36
we know that statistic. We had Mariah Lopez on the show a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, she is quite the advocate, no holds barred. She, you know, she just like lets it all hang out. You're going to be hearing a lot. I mean, there's already a lot about her, but she really is take no prisoners. That's where things have to go. And you're absolutely right. But there's also, I feel like when I'm going to go back to I'm a lot older than you. And back in the 70s, I had friends that were trans, and they just were. And I lived in New York City, and people would go and get surgeries. And in our group in New York City, it was not a big deal. However, it's also a socioeconomic thing, because those girls working on 11th Avenue of color were getting murdered, the trans girls back then. Yeah. What I've seen now, first of all, the amount of people that are transitioning, and we've had doctors and nurses on the show talking about it's really a big number, and the way hormones have affected things. So you have a huge community that's growing. It's like any community, right? You have your hardcore advocates in it, and then you have people, and Simone is talking this, they call it going stealth, that just, want to transition, blend in, and live happily ever after. And that's something that I've had to learn to accept, because I'm thinking, well, don't you want to advocate for this? Don't you want to advocate for that? No, they just want to live their life as they should be allowed to. I tell you something, Celeste, it is a big learning curve in society, you know, and we need to embrace it, and we need to move forward with it.
I want to address, I saw a comment that it was a while ago. Somebody was asking, at least talking about name changes in New Jersey and the need to publish the fact that you're seeking a name change in New Jersey. Neither adults nor kids have to do that anymore. The court rule changed a couple of months ago, so there's no need to publish name changes. Now, there is, and Steven, I apologize if we didn't send this to you. If you're in New Jersey, or even not in New Jersey, but you care about trans people, frankly, the New Jersey Supreme Court is considering some rule changes that would make name changes for everyone be confidential, so under seal. So that kind of goes to your point, Wendy, which is like, people just want to change their names. Like, how about this? When you get married, you don't have to publish the fact that you're changing your last name. Just that as a matter of course. And every time people name a baby, they don't have to run it through the government. So why is it that when you're an adult and you're having to change your name, particularly in the digital age, that you would need to have a public record of it? Listen, I can't escape my life, the website, and who I lived with when I was like 22. So there's no hiding anymore in a digital age. So there is an opportunity for public comment. You can submit public comments via email in support of it. I know that the Supreme Court and the Administrative Office of the courts actually read those. So as a policy issue, Steven, I think TriVersity should look into whether or not it wants to submit some input and some proposed comment. The deadline is March 25th, I think. But if it's coming close, I bet you can submit a request to comment later. But that goes for everybody who's watching. If it's something so simple, you do have to provide your name, but that's okay. I mean, put your money where your mouth is, which is saying, like, I support trans rights.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if we could get the information on that, and then we will put it up on our page and our website, that would really be great.
Yeah.
This is what
this is the direction I see TriVersity going. Social advocacy is the future. And so it's going to be these kind of projects that we need to work on and tackle.
Yeah. So. And I think that the more the merrier, and the more the better. Because the more that we all know about what should be happening, it means that we can all be upstanders. There's a big movement to be an upstander. And I think if you don't know what should be happening, you can't point out when it's not, right? And so, what should trans people expect when they're, going somewhere? They shouldn't be asked for their ID unnecessarily, or they shouldn't be asked their gender. I can't tell you how many places that I go and they have a gender checkbox. And I'm like, but somebody's did it for shoes. What does this have to do with? I'm just going to tell you my size.
Well, okay, let's talk about the COVID vaccine. Every site I went to, I went to 6 sites to register. They asked gender on every one of them. What does that have to do with the COVID vaccine?
I don't know, but I will tell you that Essex County had non-binary as an option, and all New Jersey counties should have non-binary as an option because we have X gender markers on our birth certificates. So we better be, every time we're going to ask that gender question, we better be providing an option. We got to get them all, or just don't ask. And I think it's tracking, but at least for the vaccine, I'll give you that. Tracking, if there's a disparate, I don't know, showing up for a vaccine amongst people assigned a gender. I don't know. But you're right.
I mean, and I will even say, it's an aspect of privilege, because when I see a gender check, I'm like, I'll just check it and don't think about it, because I don't have to think about it. But why? That's
right.
Just not necessary in most instances.
And and that's what comes up when I talk to a lot of medical providers, because they say, well, I need to know gender. And I always ask, well, do you really need to know gender, or do you need to know what body part somebody has? And are you asking me, if I have a uterus, or are you asking me if I was assigned female at birth? Because for any, people who have uteruses, you can have a hysterectomy and you're not going to get pregnant. You don't have any of the parts. So you're really, right? And Wendy, I can see that your face, you've had to answer all of those no,
totally. And these kinds of questions have got what if I did have a hysterectomy? Am I supposed to tell you my uterus is missing? I mean, how deep do we go with this? And is it relevant? Listen, I can understand when you go to a hospital, depending on what you're sick with, they have to ask questions like that. It should be done in confidence and with respect and all of that, because it's got to do with your health and well-being. But anything else, it's really none of anybody's business. And what has that got to do with the price of eggs? I'm sorry, but, it's invasive.
I agree. And, it's funny that you brought up the price of eggs, because one of the things, and it has nothing to do with eggs, it has to do with haircuts. Have you noticed that the prices for ladies' haircuts are always more expensive than men's haircuts, even if the exact same haircut?
Right. Well, but
quality have to eliminate that.
That came from old school, okay? Because, now many females have very, very, very short hair. There are males that have longer hair than females, right? But old school, if we go back to the 60s, to generalize, women had long hair, therefore the price was more. But no, you're right. They haven't changed the price of haircuts either.
No, and yet you're paying women get paid less on the dollar than men, and we have to pay
more for a haircut.
How's that? Equality Act, folks. Tell your Congress people. Save you money on haircuts.
That's even more than the Equality Act. Those are the things you just have to change on a grassroots level, because they're things that nobody thinks about until you call them out. You know, it's like, what, you know, this is bogus. And then you sit and think, and you're like, oh. Yeah, I've never thought of that before. And I mean, again, when you're fortunate enough to never think about it, I can walk into a barber, get a $10 haircut, and that's the end of it.
Is that a $10 haircut? They did a very good job, Steven.
15.
With a tip. So, Celeste, I want to ask you, you have a blended family.
Yes.
What's the experience like for the kids? What is the dynamic in the family?
So we call ourselves the Motley Crew. Because,
oh my God. Right.
Everybody in the house has a different last name. We're all part of the same family. We all know that, you know, your last name does not make you a family. We know that you can change your first name. We're close to having all of the letters in the alphabet, like LGBT, in the house. And so it's, you know, we have the kids that say, no, we don't say fireman, we say firefighter. You know, and so it's our first graders who were like, no, you missed non-binary people. Or, you know, boys and girls, that's not how we divide people anymore. You have to come up with another one because that doesn't make any sense. So we've got a village for certain. And I am thankful that we are able to divide up what we are strongest at. I am not the most emotional, touchy-feely person. So I don't generally do emotional, touchy-feely things. I do Tickle Monster, though.
So you have to tickle. That's a very valid role to play, okay?
Yeah, it really is. It's very important. The whole thing would crumble if it wasn't for me tickling my kids. No, and we've been really lucky with school, virtual school.
I was going to ask about school when the kids were going physically. I know you did say it's virtual now, but what was it like when they were going for them?
We very quickly went completely virtual. So our firm, we've been 100% virtual for just about a year. I think we went virtual before the governor of New Jersey said, you know, let's do the social distancing thing. And we've been, you know, really careful. The 13-year-old plays basketball, you know, but we put the mask on when he's not on the court. There've been a lot of limitations, but video games and the internet have, I think, supplemented a lot of that social feedback, especially for a teacher, because, you know, it's basically like he's on the phone with his friends and hanging out with his friends. So he's still getting that. The computers, I think, are like they're like the harbingers of like, somebody's on a call, or like I have to be quiet now.
They get it. Okay, that's cool. They get it. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, and the twins love school. I have two twins, and they're in first grade, and they love school. They try to do more homework.
Right. Do they ever?
I get lucky. I just get randomly lucky, right? Like, I want to be online for school all the time. Perfect.
How do you nurture that so it never goes away?
Right. Celeste, there's parents watching right now that want to slit your throat for saying that they do. It's like
all credit to the co-parents. I didn't have any.
My mother was always one that would always sit down and do her homework. I never had to ask her to do that, but you know, not everybody has that experience. So let's say you got lucky. Now, within their friends group, when they, or even, I think you said your son plays basketball, right? And do those kids, how are they with questions that come up about your family?
Well, I think that, you know, because he's older, he'll be like, whatever, they're just my parents and my family. Shut up. I don't want to talk about them a little bit.
I love that.
You know what I mean? Like, he's a teenager. So it's like, they're like, oh, who's that? And he, when I came out to him and was explaining non-binary, like a little bit more when he had more of a sense of it, he's like, so what am I supposed to call you? I'm like, your parent.
Right. But that's a good, you know what? That's a good, honest question. Right.
Yeah. He's like, so what am I supposed to say? I'm like, your parents? What else? And he was like, oh yeah, duh. Again, it's like when trans people are involved, we lose our minds. Even my own kids do it. And when our other co-parent got a new partner, we realized that like I needed a name, to designate me not as Celeste, but like as, like parenting name. So we settled on Abba. So if you know anything about Hebrew, it is.
I do. Abba.
Yeah. Right. But for like the folks that don't, like when some of my kids call me Abba, they're like, oh yeah, okay, cool, that's your Abba, whatever.
I'm thinking Dancing Queen. I knew
you were going to say that. Right. I knew you were going to say that, Steven. I know. I was going to say not the rock group from Sweden.
Not the Swedish rock group. No. I have fun, but not that fun.
So funny.
So it's they're just matter of fact about it. So the younger people are, the more they're like, oh, okay. They just, because they don't have all of the other baggage. You just tell them, how else do you teach a kid? You're like, this mug is black. And they go, oh, okay. Because you just told them it was black. So if you just tell them like, I'm your parent, you call me Abba, I'm non-binary, they're like, okay.
And it's all cool with them.
Yeah, and what skin in the game do they have? None.
Right. It's amazing how kids can be, right? Their honesty levels incredible. So even when they were going to school, their teachers that you've met, everybody was cool in the school that you're with.
Yeah, they just knew that when we came for an IEP meeting, they were going to have to use the big table because we joked that we roll large, because there'd be three adults in the twins.
Right.
And then the older one has 4, so it's like it was just a lot of people, blended.
There's a lot of people, but you're dealing with the people you're dealing with are completely cool with everything. And I guess I'm bringing this around full circle because we're dealing with a school board thing tonight and really transphobic, anti-LGBTQ remarks that were made that really have to be addressed in our area in particular. That show can't go on any longer. Wherever you are living, and I live in New York, it's a whole different ball game. Okay, but I think these things you got to sweep it out from under the carpet right now. It's got to be transparent, and you have to nip it in the bud. And I think what made me feel so good about tonight, Steven, we had messages going back and forth. The amount of moms, okay, not LGBTQ moms, not moms of just moms that are there, that are going there to support tonight or write letters. When I read that stuff, it's just so reaffirming to me. It makes you believe in human beings and that everyone is going to want things to be equal for everybody, which is how it has to be.
Mm-hmm. And I found that parents, the parents of LGBT kids are some of the fiercest advocates. But if you think about it, everybody's child could be LGBT.
That is
never know. And people come out at various stages of their lives. So if you really care about your family, or if you really care about your community, you should care about all aspects of your community. And like this is like you said, basic level. And frankly, the more we're protecting trans people or the most vulnerable, we all actually benefit. And that's thanks capitalism. But, we do. It makes it easier for all of us. The more our identities are respected and our needs are respected.
Exactly.
So Celeste, let me ask you. So not asking you like, what would you do? Would you sue this person or anything? But as you are, Celeste, who happens to be an attorney, and a board member comes out and says remarks like Don Bouquet, what do you do?
Oh, you write a letter and you organize a bunch of people to go there. And then you find a person in the community who wants to run for that person's seat. And then you take over the school board.
Right.
The next part is to replace that person. And it's funny, we had something, I think it was Jersey City. We had an email somebody was saying something, again, transphobic or anti-LGBT, and the pressure on them made them go away. And I want to make just one quick comment. This whole cancel culture thing is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I just have to say it, because we all know I've been trying to show my kids 80s and 90s movies, and they are awful. We were awful to each other. We were mean. I don't want to raise them with that. I was trying to show them this stuff, and I was like, no, turn it off. This is not, I don't think of this fondly. If you said that, so it's just us improving. It is just us, raising our standards as a community of saying like, nah, you know what? We don't want to say that. We don't want to do that anymore. It's not canceling. It became obsolete.
Well, like, nothing for nothing. Now we're taking this to a whole new level, because in an article in another paper, the Pike County Dispatch, Mrs. Bouquet basically said, I'm not apologizing. I won't be canceled by the mob. And I'm like, so an apology is cancellation now. I mean, it's not getting rid of you. It's just having to apologize is canceling these days. I mean,
well, we also canceled slavery, right? Is that okay? We're all okay with it? Can we like find a basic level that we're all okay with, like canceling? It's what we've always done. Like, how many products did we use 10 years ago who drinks Mountain Dew? Does anybody still drink it? It's not because they came out.
Every now and then, I got to tell you, it brings back.
It's not fully canceled.
I mean, what I would say as a pushback to this is I think of somebody like Monica Lewinsky, who I would say was canceled and kind of had her life ruined on something that it takes two to tango at the very least. And so, I mean, there are genuine concerns from time to time that we're too quick to cut off somebody, but we can't address those genuine concerns because now we have people that yell cancel the minute you say, oh, you shouldn't have said that. Oh, you're canceling me. Well, no.
Yeah, it's funny. We're lawyers, so like I'm recorded every time I go into court. And so part of it is that when you have a public platform, you have to be more careful with what you say. It's the same thing as like when you had kids. Before somebody has kids, you're letting loose curse words left and right. And then you have these kids and you're like, oh.
Yeah, you don't want to do that anymore. Right.
I don't want to do that anymore. And that's kind of like, I feel like that's where we've gotten to, where we're like, maybe our standards were a little lower, but we're not there anymore. So we should be careful about what we're saying. Or you just showed how you felt and nobody likes what you think and feel. So you're not being canceled. You're just obsolete.
I'm perfectly happy if she would just say, I fucked up. I
just got a text in. This is the timing on this once again. Is perfect. She's lying about her Facebook comment, her science comment, and reference to her friend's proof about chromosomes and gender, and science for and against mass and climate change. She's lying about all of it now. So that's what somebody feels that it's okay to do. And I don't even know where to go with that.
I would like to emphasize on this point. Okay, so she says that she didn't realize when she shared her friend's post that it would include his caption. Now, if it didn't include the caption, then she just shared a picture of Rand Paul. There was no article attached. So I would have been kind of okay with that because she put her own caption, this person is dangerous. So if it had just been a picture of Rand Paul, I'd been like, okay, I don't know. But it was pretty important that caption was there, and it would make no sense that you just shared a random picture of Rand Paul. So it takes like a 5-year-old detective skills to kind of figure out that you're full of shit. Right. Just saying.
Right. Yeah. I do think no matter what happens, this has been an example. And you said it earlier, Celeste, it's about community turning around and saying, no, we're not accepting this. And every time we can out somebody like Dawn with our community, okay, and it doesn't have to necessarily be LGBTQ community. Everybody needs to get on the same page and say, no, this is wrong. We are not going to accept it. All right. So no matter what happens, we at least got that from this. I do personally feel, my dad was a lawyer. So I grew up in somewhat of a legal house, but my dad was a lawyer that defended the underdog. He did criminal. He brought home pornographers and everything else. My mother was like always horrified. He defended a lot of people that maybe shouldn't have been defended. But I find myself often frustrated with law because this incident with her, I still can't comprehend why they just can't say to her, no, you cannot be president of the school board. Those remarks have taken you down and you have to resign. All right. And I don't understand why that person may be there next week.
Did you just respond like a lawyer, Steven, by saying nothing, just wiggling your head?
I would push back.
Lawyers here.
I mean, it is going to what Celeste said. The people responsible for getting rid of someone like Don Bouquet are the people. I mean, that's up to us to do. It's like, you don't like somebody you elected, they say something really asinine, then you vote their ass out. It's Survivor 101, and that's just right. That's what's got to happen. I mean, there's no quick fix. I mean, again, what she said was truly heinous, but she didn't target it at a student or anything. So it's very tough to say you should be removed or you should be forced to resign. Unless
okay, I'm not a lawyer, but I strongly disagree that there is no room for that. We can't allow that to happen. You know what? You saw what happened in this country for 4 years. It was horrible. Talk to people that knew those trans people that were murdered left and right. That kind of culture makes those kinds of things happen. By letting somebody like this person go scot-free, I don't agree with it. It didn't have to be targeted to one particular person. The fact that she thinks it, the fact that she believes it, and the fact that she's head of the school board, gone girl. That's how I feel.
Girl, bye. Not president of the school board, thank goodness. She's just on the
right. Head of the school board.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question. But she's not getting off scot-free. Let's keep it that way. I mean, we're not letting her get off scot-free. We're putting pressure on him. We're letting everyone on that school board know that if you pull this kind of crap, we're going to call you out on it, and it's going to be drama that you don't want in your life. So don't do it.
There you go. Oh my God, we have questions for Celeste? Do we have any questions or comments tonight?
Simone had one question, but it's kind of something we addressed, which is, do you think the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and the Equality Act will clash?
Yeah.
And I'm going to respond by going right to the Equality Act. There is a reference to the Religious Freedom and Restoration Act. And I'll just read it to you. And then for all the non-lawyers in the room, you can just feel like you can know what it feels like to be a lawyer for like just a couple of minutes. Terrible. Don't do it. Do you know how many interns we've had that I have said don't go to law school? And do you know what they do? They go to law school. Why? You worked for our firm long enough. You should know You should know. Here we go. I looked at this. Dun, dun, dun. Drama. Oh, I hate the summaries. Don't only read the summaries. That's like reading the back of the jacket of the book. Like you're always going to miss something, and half the time they don't even put the right spoiler on there. Because what they do is they take out a couple of things. People wonder why nobody likes lawyers, right? We see things like that.
Yep. It's a word or two that can
get you. All right. Section 107 claims. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993 shall not provide a claim concerning or a defense to a claim under a covered title or provide a basis for challenging the application or enforcement of a covered title. That's your answer, Simone. Sorry.
What is a cover title? Just says.
I don't know. It's when Sting covers the Beatles. I don't know.
A covered wagon.
Yeah, covered wagon. It's Oklahoma. I don't know. We can throw in some more references here. But I mean, on some level, though, it remains to be seen because somebody's going to file a lawsuit. If this passes, there will inevitably be a lawsuit challenging it. There's going to be a baser somewhere who doesn't want to make a cake for a trans person. I mean, we can kind of see it playing out, right? And so then our Supreme Court will have to decide. And so that's why politics matters and why politics is local, but also like you start to cut your teeth on things like school boards. The more that we have folks that are educated, or even if they're like not 100%, like you don't have to be a lawyer. There are a lot of legislators or elected officials who are not lawyers. They're just good people. And so part of that is then having other people you trust to tell you, hey, this is something that you should go with, right? So I'm like, I have no good answers. I'm the lawyer.
That's the true sign of a lawyer.
It depends.
Ambiguous and doesn't make anyone happy. Well, Celeste, as we get to the close of our time, we always hand the floor to our guests. Are there any last plugs or last words you'd like to say?
Two things: be kind to one another, but also volunteer, donate your time, give somebody positive feedback. I mean, we are so disconnected, but also way more connected than we ever were with the internet. Be careful what you put out there. Like, try to put out positivity rather than negativity. And if you can support somebody with a like, do it. I mean, it's no skin, and it's always like I'm not Southern, but I take some of this to heart. Like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So be kind to one another and donate to the Trans Affirming Alliance.
Well, cheers. Well, let me get that website up.
There we go.
TransAffirmingAlliance.org, and also, of course, check out ArgentinoLaw.com.
Yep.
So, well, Celeste, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you all for having me. It's I'm glad that I could be here on this very historic night for you folks. So I'm interested to see how it turns out.
Yes,
we'll let you know, believe me.
So I am curious too to see what messages appear on my phone once we log out. But thank you everyone for tuning in, and for those of you who are watching this on archive who went to the school board meeting, thank you for that. And we will see you next week, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.